Strap in, folks, this is gonna be a long one. With the new information of 2.4 and the new release of a Harbinger by the name of Arlecchino, it's time to return to the tinfoil hat and introduce a theory that's been plaguing my mind since the drop of the Mocking Mask and the Clean House World Quest. Welcome to this Dainsleif of Fatui Harbinger analysis and theory video, where today I will be discussing the points for and against this theory. I'll tell my personal conclusions at the end of the video, but I want to cover this argument to the best of my abilities because it actually was an interesting question that I couldn't pinpoint the answer. But first, a word from our sponsor. Opera GX is the first ever browser built specifically for gamers. I actually use this browser a lot already since I like their features, and I've already covered about their CPU RAM control and their music integrations, so today I'm covering the other features. The Opera browser has amazing custom animated wallpapers like the one you're seeing on screen with Timo. You can get a whole bunch more custom animated wallpapers on their browser. Opera GX also allows you to access your social media like Facebook Messenger, Twitter, Discord, and Instagram from your sidebar, so you never have to keep alt-tabbing just to chat with friends. Okay, this one's my favorite. Opera GX is super friendly when it comes to add-ons and other stuff that you need from other browsers, which is a super big bonus for me because some plugins I need are on Google Chrome. A lot of people were asking me why my Google Docs was in dark mode, and it's because I have an extension. It was a Google Chrome extension, but I integrated it over, so whoopee. They have their own extension store, but Google Chrome extensions are also compatible with Opera add-ons. Plus, you can import your settings like browsing history, bookmarks, and cookies from your previous browser. You know, if you have a browsing history, I see you. Other features include Hot Tabs Killer, which helps you identify what the most resource-draining tabs are, GX Cleaner to remove old files and prevent blockage, video pop-outs so you can watch YouTube stuff on another tab, VPN and ad blocker, and the actual best thing in the world that I personally recommend everyone start using, Force Dark Mode, which makes sure you don't get blinded by websites that are pure white. So go right ahead and download Opera GX with the link in the description. Leave a comment on this video with the hashtag Opera with Aster, and tell me who's your favorite Genshin character and why. I need a new DPS. I think DPS Kaza has finally gotten me hostage. Please help me. Thank you again to Opera GX for sponsoring this video. Anyway, with that, let's begin. So, I want to specifically ask if Dainsleif is the Harbinger Pierrot, also known as the Jester or the first Fatui. This was the Fatui Harbinger we meet in the Mocking Mask artifact set in 1.5, the name drop from Scaramouche in 1.1, and the person who assigned Nathan in 2.1 to Inazuma. So let's dive into what these characters first are. Dainsleif was introduced to us in the character trailers, and he's the disembodied voice in the character miscellanies. Dainsleif had always been a curious character from the very beginning, properly entering the story at 1.3 in a Dainsleif Bowkeeper Archon quest. As we journey with him, we find out that he's a heavy enemy of the Abyss and is searching for an entity known as the Abyss Herald. He also tells us about his old traveling companion and the history of Conria, and in the end, we see that his origins were revealed. Dainsleif was a close companion of our sibling, and he used to be known as the Twilight Sword. He was once the royal vanguard of the dynasty, but the Abyss sibling accuses him of watching in the side as his people turned into the monsters of the Abyss. He was then cursed with immortality and forced to roam the land for 500 years. For some reason, he knows the stories of the characters we know now and even little secrets in the present time that should have been kept a secret. Now we go to Pierrot, the Jester. Pierrot is a character of the Mocking Mask and allegedly even the Polar Star. However, I'm a little hesitant to say that the Polar Star is his lore because there was no concrete name drop and we know too little about Pierrot to make any connections. All we know is that Pierrot was once a member of a civilization that was destroyed by the Heavenly Principles. He had tried to warn the foolish ruler, but was ignored because he claims his intelligence was not of the same caliber as the sages. Therefore, the civilization fell by the hands of divine retribution. Pierrot wants to rebel against the foundational principles of the world, and seeks for those that will aid his and the Tsaritsa's cause. There are a lot of connections to both of these characters' backstories and personalities that line up both in the past and the present. First is that they're both Conrian. Conria was never name-dropped in the Mocking Mask, but it's safe to assume. The Fatui was established by Pierrot and the Tsaritsa to specifically rebel against the Heavenly Principles. A in the Archon quest describes Conria as a land that fell to the hands of the Heavenly Principles, and the first entity the travelers met before trying to leave the world was known as the Sustainer of Heavenly Principles. That means both of them lived for 500 years. Living for 500 years wouldn't be enough to say that they share a connection, of course. La Senora has lived through centuries because of other reasons entirely, But there are enough hints that they're both Conrian and that they're not part of the sages. Dainsleif was a royal vanguard. Additionally, they're both not part of the Abyss Order despite being Conrian, and they aren't fully corrupted for some unknown reason. Or at least, it's safe to assume that Pierrot looks human enough, because I doubt that Senora, Dottore, and Pantalone would actively allow for themselves to align with an Abyss Mage or Herald, Senora especially. Dainsleif and Pierrot also hold positions of power next to a ruler. Dainsleif used to be part of the Royal Guard, and Pierrot is allegedly the right-hand man of the Tsaritsa, or Her Majesty. Dainsleif and Pierrot also seem to be actively fighting against short-sighted gods and the corruption of the Abyss. Dainsleif and Pierrot both express a kind of duality when it comes to their opinions on gods in the Abyss. Dainsleif's distrust of the gods are also plentiful all throughout the series, saying that they're not truly that special and that one shouldn't trust them immediately.
You shouldn't place too much trust in them. But at the same time, don't go too far in the opposite direction. Don't go trying to overthrow them or hunt them down, even if the god in question is your sworn enemy.
Don't trust them and don't hunt them. That's some awkward advice. Does Dane hate the Seven, or is he protecting them?
Lest I repeat the failings of my forebears.
In the Pale Flame set, the Stainless Bloom, Senora says that she, Pierrot, and the Tsaritsa share the same goal, to rid the world of short-sighted gods and the corruption of the Abyss. Pierrot and Dainsleif also seem to be oppositions to the old Conrian way. Conria had a direct feud with Celestia, as hinted with all the Ruin Guards dominating Teyvat during the time and the Conrians' desire to get the book before Sun and Moon. Conria seemed to want to overthrow Celestia, and according to the Abyss Order, they want to topple the Divine Thrones. Dainsleif warns the Traveler that he shouldn't go overthrowing a god, even if the god is your sworn enemy. He also tells them that Conria was plucked out like a weed from the Garden of the Gods.
500 years ago, the gods descended upon the world and brought desolation to Conria. The pride of humankind was uprooted and crushed, like a weed removed from the Garden of the Gods.
How could that be? The history books don't say anything about that.
Yes, well, continuing to discuss the past now will only dampen our spirits.
Pierrot, on the other hand, tried to warn the foolish ruler but wasn't listened to. Another one that I think is pretty interesting is that they both use hints and subtle techniques to show exposition to other characters. It's a really weird detail that I noticed while reading the Pale Flame set, but Pierrot uses wordplay to keep his secrets. He called Dottore the doctor despite knowing Dottore was a dangerous scientist, and in the Clean House World Quest, the password given to those that work under Pierrot is called "That's a Killer Joke." On the side note, the way Dainsleif hints at his origin to the Traveler is by asking 500 more from them and asking vague questions to connect the siblings. Dainsleif has also been really dodgy throughout the Archon quests he's featured in, constantly averting Paimon's questions about his origins.
But I suppose that this place is more lair than storm terror at this point. In fact, if my memory serves, this ruin has had largely nothing to do with that dragon for a long time. The first time I laid eyes upon the ruins of Old Mondstadt, the dragon of the East had yet to fall, much less come to nest in this place.
Huh? But Paimon remembers that Dvalin first got in trouble hundreds of years ago.
Don't think too much about it.
Dainsleif also parallels well with the comedic counterpart of Pierrot. Pierrot was known to be a sad clown character that was simply a humble servant. Pierrot is solitary and the recipient of misfortune. He's also very isolated with those around him and out of touch. That's why I said a while ago that Arlecchino being revealed as a separate character was important. Arlecchino in the Commedia, or the Harlequin, was basically antithetical to the Pierrot's quiet and pathetic personality. If the Harbinger Pierrot was similar to the Harlequin, then this theory falls flat just from the basis of character personality. Also, both Pierrot of the Commedia and Dainsleif are chasing after someone, Columbina and the Abyss sibling respectively. Though for Pierrot and Columbina it was romantic, I can believe that Dainsleif and the Abyss siblings' connections were close friends that have met unfortunate circumstances, though it's clear that Dain still holds these memories dear. So if we connect these stories, we get this timeline. Dainsleif was once part of the royal guard of the Eclipse dynasty known as the Twilight Sword. He would try to convince the foolish ruler to stop what they were doing, but the ruler didn't listen because he wasn't amongst the sages. Dainsleif would have had a falling out with the Eclipse dynasty, and for reasons unknown, would watch as the people of Conria turn into monsters of the abyss. The cataclysm came and Conria would fall to the heavenly principles. The journey with the sibling is a questionable when, but it could be after the cataclysm, but before establishing ties with the Tsaritsa. Dainsleif would meet the Tsaritsa in the future, thus forming the Fatui. He would also seek out people that have been wronged by both society and by gods, specifically Senora, Dottore, and Pantalone. Much like his role as a part of the royal guard, he would be a leader and the right-hand man of the Tsaritsa. Throughout the years, the Fatui would grow in number as Dainsleif pursues his own agenda. Since he was from Conria, he would have close ties to celestial knowledge from the sages, much like how the sages of Conria had knowledge of the time before Celestia because of Enkanomiya. He would tell Scaramouche about the fake sky, tell Dottore about the ruin guards, and tell Senora about the abyss. His connections with the Fatui would be why he knows so much about the characters around him, such as why he would have close tabs on the characters in the character miscellany. Being a part of the Fatui, he would have direct access to their knowledge about other nations, thus the character trailer. Dainsleif would also have direct connections to the top secret agenda by the Fatui. For example, in 1.3, he told the traveler that Zhongli signed the Gnosis away to end all contracts, name-dropping the Gnosis as the bargaining chip. Not even Tartaglia knew about this deal, so how would Dainsleif be aware that the Gnosis was given to the Fatui instead of just saying the Gnosis was taken away, like how Tartaglia initially planned? Why he would want to align himself with the Traveler is currently unknown, but at the moment, the Traveler is an enigma in everything. They could be a possible ally of the Fatui given that the Traveler also has resentment towards the god that trapped them in Tevat, or he simply wants to keep close tabs on the Traveler for the time being. Or he just doesn't really care about the Traveler, being completely honest. Only time will tell. Alright, so that's the full breakdown of all of this. Let's now go back to the implications for the future. First is that if Dainsleif is Pierrot, Dainsleif would have access to the delusion and abyssal magic. I can guess it's like the Dottore and Pantalone situation in which none of them had a vision but was given a delusion. Also, this means that he regards the Tsaritsa as a separate entity when talking about the gods and the Seven. This would mirror Senora's mindset very well. She regards the short-sighted gods as different from her loyalty to the Tsaritsa, which wouldn't contrast the personality. Second is that, again, Dainsleif is the biggest connection of the Fatui to Conria. The Fatui are artificially made to be a military superpower, with their factories and their guns and their human experiments. I don't think Dainsleif would be all that for the death of the people, but as a royal guard, and if he allegedly stood by as the people he cared for turned into the monsters of the abyss, then the end could possibly justify the means. Third is that the Fatui never wanted to rule Celestia. The Abyss and the Fatui have very different goals. The Fatui want to rebel against the heavenly principles and believe that in destruction comes renewal of the world. Those are the Tsaritsa's principles. But for the Abyss, it's to topple the thrones of Celestia. The thrones could be a reference to Phanas and the angels of Celestia, as seen from the Enkanomiya lore. The first creatures that invaded the world was known as thrones, and that there were 2 of them that came to Tevat. Fourth is that Dainsleif is now the best bet for the Traveler to ally with the Fatui. Of course, the Traveler would feel very betrayed. But if he could get information from Dainsleif about Celestia and Conria for the price of allying himself with the Fatui, we don't know if Traveler would accept or not. Alright, so those are the points for the theory. Let's go for the ones that contradict this theory and try to explain it from there. First is that Dainsleif says that he wasn't given favor by the gods before and now. If he was given a delusion, that would be contradicting that statement because it's technically the favor of the Tsaritsa. Second is something more personal for me, but there's something about Dainsleif's personality that seems to contradict with the idea of Pierrot the Harbinger. Yes, I did say that Dainsleif has a lot of connections to the Commedia dell'arte version of Pierrot, but we don't know how much of the sad clown motif was actually translated in-game. Dain's connections to the Pierrot sad clown motif means nothing if the Harbinger Pierrot was seen to be loud, conniving, and sociable, though it could just be that we don't know much about Pierrot in the first place. We know that he is a commander, which would connect to Dainsleif's old profession of being a knight. We know that Dainsleif admits that he might accidentally say something that the nuns wouldn't like to hear in the church about their gods, and Dainsleif himself seems to have a way with sarcasm. Their dialogue patterns of long monologues don't seem to be too far away from each other, but it's just a personal take. Third is that Dainsleif would be hypocritical. He says that he doesn't like Ganya for being obligated to Rex Lapis, but he let himself be an ally of the Tsaritsa, possibly even being her closest confidant. It could be like the Scaramouche situation where his loyalty to Her Majesty isn't really cutthroat, but I don't think Pierrot would openly disregard his status as the first Harbinger, and Pierrot seems to be very loyal. Fourth is that the guild doesn't know this man, which is strange. Mondstadt is a land filled with the Fatui, so if Dainsleif was a Harbinger, he'd be recognized unless he was wearing a disguise. The Adventurers Guild headquarters was in Snezhnaya as well, so it's weird for Catherine not to know who a Harbinger is. But yes, there are sufficient evidence that both correlate and contradict this theory. As for me, I feel like Dainsleif isn't Pierrot, which is weird given that I spent a good while trying to prove that they are. I don't know, it's a strange feeling I have. The pieces all line up, but I've got a nagging suspicion I just can't explain why. Though, it's an interesting thought experiment. If Dainsleif isn't Pierrot, that means we have two characters with literally the same backstories. I hope that Dainsleif is a neutral party like the Traveler, but if he was a member of the Fatui, then it is what it is. But yes, that concludes this video. Now you know just a little bit more about Dainsleif and how he could be a Fatui Harbinger. Again, download Opera GX now and comment with the hashtag Opera with Aster along with your favorite Genshin character. And what are your thoughts for this wild-ass theory? It definitely has a little bit more ground to stand than the Scaramouche Raiden theory which connected them for their hair color. Anyway, my name is Aster and thank you for chilling with me.